Inspiration for Teachers podcast, bringing you dynamic and inspirational educator interviews. Our fascinating guests share their professional challenges and creative resolutions for success. Discover their workable strategies, ideas, and resources to reach your educational goals. And now your host, Kelly Long.
Thank you for downloading and plugging in this episode of Inspiration for Teachers. We've got some great themes coming up on the show for you today with our guest, Tony Vincent. We're going to be discussing technology in the classroom and how to model it for all of us technophobes out there, including myself sometimes. I recently did a coding workshop and I was like, what? I don't get this. So we're going to be breaking that down, how to get the best out of technology. We're also going to look at strong learning communities for schools and how to get good, valuable professional learning development for teachers. We've also got great ideas for pupil-based learning. So please stay tuned, you're going to get some really valuable resources today. And now I'd like to introduce today's guest, Tony Vincent from Learning Hand. Hello Tony, welcome to the show. Please can you introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about you?
Yeah, well, I currently live in Council Bluffs, Iowa, but previous to that I was a fifth grade teacher, and even though I don't teach fifth grade anymore, I think I'll forever identify as a fifth grade teacher. I taught fifth grade for 6 years, and then a couple of years after that, I taught kindergarten through fifth grade and their teachers as my school's technology specialist. So I got to coach students and teachers in using technology for learning. And I've always been interested in education. I think I decided to become a teacher in sixth grade. And ever since then, I feel like I've been in teachers college because I studied every teacher I had, and the teachers I loved I knew I wanted to emulate, and the teachers that I didn't love so much, I knew I wanted to do something differently.
And what was the things that stuck out for you about those teachers? Because a lot of teachers have a similar background that they wanted to do things differently. So for you, what was that?
I think my favorite teacher was my high school Latin teacher. And you'd think Latin, that's not a fun subject, but kids in our high school were lining up to get into her classes because she was so great. She taught almost like we were in elementary school. We had like 40-minute periods, and she said 40 minutes is too long to do any one thing. So we'll always do at least two completely different activities during that time. And she just kept things fun and interesting. All the students loved her, and we learned so much just because of the way she ran her classroom.
That's so true. I once did a walkthrough as a pupil, and I spent a whole day shadowing a pupil, and an hour into it I was yawning. It's really good to put you into that situation so that you realise how difficult it is being a learner in a classroom all day. So to have that passion and that spark, I think it's really important. You were a teacher, and now let's go into what you actually do now for teachers.
So I think it's been about 8 years now. I left my school, which I loved my school, so that was a really hard decision to do. But now I work self-employed as a consultant, and I work with schools and conferences and events. Really, I'm a teacher for hire. Anybody that will have me, I'll go there. I've worked in over 40 states and several countries. Speaking at conferences and going to schools and doing hands-on workshops. So now I guess I think of myself as a teacher of teachers.
What we're going to do is we're going to delve into your knowledge and how you do all of that. But before we do, what I like to do on the show is to keep everybody on their toes and ask a question of them that they are not prepared for, so that we know what it feels like to be a child in our classrooms all over again, and do an immediate deep dive into your knowledge. So are you ready?
I think so.
The question that I have for you, Tony, is how do schools better use technology to, one, enable their teachers, and two, empower their learners?
Well, I think there's so many different uses for technology. And the part that I've really studied and that I try to explain to teachers is that it can help you get things done more efficiently, things faster in more time. And it can also help you be creative and let you make things and do things that you might not have done before. When I was teaching in the late 90s, I got very excited because iMovie came out. And before that, it really wasn't very easy for teachers to make their own instructional videos. And now all of a sudden I have this tool where I can make something that took some time to learn how to do it. But in the end, I had some videos always on the computers at the back of the classroom that students were like, oh, I can't remember. What's that divisibility rule by 3? They could go back and watch the video again. In the end, saving me some time.
And you were saying about time management. What kind of technology and applications do you recommend to teachers to help with that aspect of teaching?
The number one thing is your brain, and to be mindful of,
Yes.
of what you're doing, because technology can be a time suck. You can go into Twitter or Facebook and come out 3 hours later and you not have anything accomplished that you wanted to get done. And the thing that has helped me, and I want teachers to know, is that a very, very, very small percentage of the human population can truly multitask effectively. We're much better at doing one task, and multitasking is really doing several tasks in succession, but then you have this brain power and this time shift between each thing. And technology seems to really empower us to multitask, but we have to think about what we're doing, and I do anyway. I'm sitting in front of a computer with 3 screens. It's ridiculous, because if I really want to focus on one thing, I don't need all this technology in front of me.
I think the big question about it is to ask yourself why are you using it, what impact it's going to have, and is it really going to be effective and important? So it's really interesting that you're saying that. Yeah,
definitely. Truly being mindful. The other end is, though, that for me, technology has always been fun. I love it. I love using it. It doesn't seem like work to me. It seems like play. So time can just sift on by so easily for me.
I think that's a big point that you've just made. Some people really love it, and I think it's a bit like Marmite. You either love technology in your classroom or you hate it. And what I always find interesting is how to help people make the transition from not feeling confident with it and not wanting to use it to helping them to make that transition. So if you were advising a teacher or a school on that point, how would you help a teacher that's not currently au fait with technology to start using it in their classroom? What steps would you advise them to take?
I would say model it. So many times teachers are stuck in their own classrooms and they don't get to see other teachers using it. Maybe they get to hear about it, or they hear the buzz of students saying, oh man, we just did in science, but they don't get to experience it firsthand. One of the best things that ever happened to me in my story of technology in the classroom goes back to in 2001, each of my 5th graders got a Palm Pilot as a pilot one-to-one program. And at the time, you're like, why are you giving your kids these electronic organizers? What good are they? And the school district said, well, we heard that maybe these will be great. We think you'll be a great person to try this out. And they gave me a release day, and I found some classrooms around the area that had some Palm Pilots, and I just got to go into these different, I think it was like 4 different schools that day in several different classrooms. And it was the best day of professional development I ever had, because I got to go in and I got to see what other teachers were doing and how they were teaching with it. And I think everybody could benefit from that. There's people in our schools, when I was teaching school, that she taught down the hall. I never really knew what happened in her classroom because I never got a chance to see it. And if we have teachers using technology and they're doing great with it, and teachers who are unsure about it, let those unsure ones watch the others and just pick up a few things from them. And then for me, the way I make a living nowadays is doing professional development for teachers. So I may not have my own classroom that I can invite teachers into, but I kind of do, because I run my workshops as if the teachers are my students, and we do things that they might have students do, and they get to role play as a student. And then we stop and we then debrief and talk about, okay, how can this apply to your context, and what questions do you have, and how can you take this further? How would you change it to work for you?
What I'd like to do, Tony, because I remember when I was reading through your bio, you said that you did something really exciting, which was doing podcasts with pupils. So can I just quickly take you there and just find out from you how that worked and what you did with them? Because that sounds really exciting. And I know over here in the UK, we're very much driving pupil voice, and that sounds like a method of driving pupil voice.
Oh, it was one of the best things I've ever done. Podcasting, the term and kind of the technology, was invented in September 2004 Well, I was listening to some podcasts, and it wasn't built into iTunes, and so it was really kind of, I'm never one to listen to much music at the gym, so I was excited that I'm like, oh wow, I can hear other teachers talking about education, and I can work out at the same time. Like the productivity person in me is like, wow, you can
multitask.
You can you can multitask that way because it's not two higher order brain functions you're doing. But yeah, I could get a lot done. And then I thought, okay, so as an adult, this is fun to listen to. And what about kids? Wouldn't it be great if kids, they could put their voice on the internet? And my school had been really progressive. We were very proud of the kinds of technological things we were doing. And we had, our school is called Willowdale. So we put Willow in front of everything. We had a news broadcast called Willowcam that we put on live for our school, but it was only for our school. It was a class a week would take on the job of doing the weekly Willowcast, and everybody would tune into their computers and it would be streamed throughout the building, but it wasn't on the internet. And it was really complicated to get all that done, and in the end, sometimes we had a hard time getting teachers to sign up for the week because it was a lot of work. And then when podcasting came along, it was an opportunity to think, well, movies are great, being able to see the videos fine, but if we just focused on voice, we would take out a lot of the heartache that we had. Plus, the way podcasting works is then teachers could play it anytime they wanted within the building, and we could share our voices with the world. So in February of 2015, it was Valentine's Day, we published our very first episode by second graders. And it was about 10 minutes long. And I thought long and hard about what this show would be like before we even started, because it had to fit into what kids could do and the time constraints we had. So we have a format where we'd have a host, one student would be the host, and they'd introduce a variety of segments by other kids. So we didn't have to have the whole class recording at once. We could pull kids out in the hallway and record their parts and put it together. We use GarageBand when they make mistakes and edit those out. And we had such great feedback. The kids loved doing it. It was a really true honor to be the host, but they all liked if they could participate. It gave them a real purpose for their writing, and teachers use it for writing. They use it for science. And we called it Radio Willow Web, which in hindsight, we put Willow in front of everything at our school, but little kids trying to say Radio Willow Web, those R's and W's are really hard to do. Yeah. So it's kind of fun to listen to every day when they say, welcome to Radio Willow Web, but it's fun to hear their voices, and the kids love that they can share it with their parents and their grandparents that live on the other side of the country. And then when Apple came out in the summer afterwards, and they put podcasting inside of iTunes, there were only 2 K-12 podcasts, and one of them was Radio Willow Web. So it was neat to see that we were there when Apple started taking over podcasting, I guess, inside of iTunes. And we would get emails and comments from all over the world. And one comment was neat. I was doing a podcasting workshop, and one of the teachers said, "Oh, my grandson loves Radio Willow Web, but he came to me in July, and he was so worried. He said, there are no more episodes. Is it broken? Can you check this out?" And she said, "Oh, well, they're on summer break, and they won't make episodes during the summer." So it's fun that we had a tagline of 4 kids by kids. So they would put in kind of funny jokes that other kids would get, and we knew our audience were other kids. It's still in iTunes today. Look up Radio Willow Web, and you can see episodes about sound and light, about artists, about Native Americans. I don't think the school, now they've left, they haven't published one for a while, but all the old episodes are still there and still really worthwhile listening to. I'm really proud that it served as an example for so many other podcasts powered by kids.
That's so amazing. I'm going to go and look that up, and I'm going to listen to it. Thank you for sharing that with us, Tony.
You're welcome. They're fun. And while we have different segments, a couple of my favorites are vocabulary theater. We always make it sound so sophisticated, and we have violins that play. And then there's riddles. They like to tell them riddles, and then we have like bad joke theater, where they tell a joke about, and it's all related to the content about, it's about sound and light. It's all about sound and light. If it's about electricity, it's all about electricity. But their jokes and everything, the vocabulary, the things they teach you, all revolve around that topic, which means that they know the topic really well, because they had to learn it, they had to write about it, they had to practice it, they recorded it, and then they listened to themselves over and over again. So whatever they put in that podcast, I'm pretty sure they'll know for the rest of their lives.
And it's a really creative and engaging way to, like you just said, get those pupils on board. That's really fantastic. I'm definitely going to look that up. But what I want to do now, because I could talk about podcasting all day, is what excites you right now about education and teaching?
What excites me really is what we've been talking about with podcasting, is that students can make things. They can make these digital products that they can share with their peers and in the school and with their parents, but also with the world, and possibly get feedback from the world. Being able to make these products and then for their teachers to share them on social media is incredible too, because they can really get the word out. Just this morning, I look up the hashtag comments for kids, the number 4 in there on Twitter, and I try to make a habit of doing this every once in a while and finding a blog post by a student that they want comments on, and I'll read it and give my comments and say, in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and I think it's funny, like, oh wow, somebody in Iowa found my blog post and they're writing about it, because having that audience, I think, is key. When I was a kid, almost all the projects that my teachers ever assigned, who was the audience? It was the teacher's red pen, really, and that was it. But maybe if you're lucky, what you did got put up on a bulletin board, or your diorama was in the library, but you really didn't have this kind of audience that you can reach now that we have online.
I think it's really exciting times at the moment, and I was talking to another guest in another podcast, Lindsay Adams, and she was saying from a business studies point of view, which was the subject she teaches, that there are so many products out there on the internet that we're not teaching kids how to use, and as teachers, sometimes we lack the skills. So what's my question to you based on what you just said? You were saying that Twitter is a great place for teachers to learn and develop. How does a teacher embrace Twitter to get the most out of it?
First of all, Twitter just doesn't seem to be for everyone. There are people who, no matter how much you tell them, this is great, they don't get it. But I think one of the things to help some folks along is really do look at these hashtags. Because on Twitter, there's so many people out there. How do you know what to follow? But if you just do a search for a hashtag, like if I'm really interested in iPad, I can look up hashtag iPadED, iPadEd. And there's all these great ideas just flowing by, and I don't have to read them all, but I pick up on some, and I get these great ideas. Or that hashtag comments for kids, you can get an idea of what kind of projects are kids doing in other classrooms, and maybe use them as a model for what you do in yours. So not worrying so much about who do I got to follow, but looking at hashtags or keywords that you look up to see what is going on Twitter at the moment, and what are people saying about that keyword.
That's really powerful and a great top tip, Tony. Thank you. What we're going to do is we're going to hop on over to our next question, which is, what aspects of teaching, large or small, would you most like to change? And if it's not been possible up until now, why do you think that is?
Well, I felt this as I was teaching. It seemed like every year that went by, administration had more and more paperwork for us to do. And pretty soon it seemed like your time, like you are more of, you got to collect this data, you've got to fill out this form, you've got to do that, instead of the real work, which is reaching your students. And so I know that teachers just don't have a lot of time. And for my specialty, looking at technology and tech tools, what I try to do is, since I like doing it, take the time to play and discover and see what works and digest that and package it up so that teachers who don't have the time, because nobody has enough time, especially teachers, to explore things that I'm looking on Twitter, I'm finding it for them and showing them, okay, well, try this. Narrowing down the field so that they don't have to take the time to do that.
What an interesting point with that is that a lot of schools with professional development try to establish teach meets where teachers come together and they collaboratively look at different subjects to expand upon in terms of their knowledge or pick up new skills. How do you work with teachers in schools, and how do you were talking about modeling earlier, but how do you model the best environment to get the most out of what teachers are trying to learn and what they're trying to manage in terms of all of that administration and all of that paperwork?
I'm continually learning, and I've learned things over the years. Inside my workshops or when I do conference sessions, I have the same challenges as a classroom teacher does, in that I have people who know a lot or can absorb it faster, and people who don't know much. And it's always hard to customize the day so that everybody gets something out of it. But one way that I do try that is that while I have a lot to say, I really want to hear what all the educators in the room have to say about the topic and their ideas and their questions. So what I try to do every time I do professional development is I ask to have round tables where at least 4 people can sit at each table, so that we can have discussions and we can stop and talk and share. And even better is if there's something as a group, if we spend the day together, something that we can collaboratively make, whether it's a slideshow of great ideas for using movie making in the classroom, or sample posters that we can have students make, or that we come together for a goal for maybe making something that day. Some other things is that centers or stations work great in classrooms, and they can in professional development time too. And that everybody who wants to learn about, let's say the app Explain Everything, come over here, and I have little sheets like a teacher might make that's full of QR codes that they can scan and get an introduction, and then a task for them and a way to then share out what they've done during that task. And I might have several stations set up, but then one of them is where I'm at, so that maybe people who need extra help or people who want to go above and beyond and want to see things that I can work with them, just like a teacher would differentiate their classroom.
I'm so pleased you said that, because I have been on those round tables where I've been asked to give my opinion, and at the end of it, it's very much, oh, thank you very much for sharing that, and now we're moving on. So I'm glad that you actually produce something based on what people are suggesting to you or discussing with you. That's really valuable. What I would like you to just expand a little bit on is when teachers and schools are doing it within their own environments, how do you get everybody engaged? Because you were talking about differentiation and everybody being at different levels. How do you engage beforehand what everybody is trying to be working towards and learning?
Well, I try to get to know the people. So as they're coming in, I'll ask them questions, and even beforehand, if I'm working with the principal of a school, we'll talk by phone, and I'll take extensive notes about, what does it seem like the staff is interested in, what have they done, what do you think they need help with, so that if I was in my own classroom with my 5th graders, I know all that stuff ahead of time. But it's hard working with a class of teachers, which I maybe just meet with them once or twice. So I try to get to know as much as I can ahead of time. I always send out a little web link beforehand for all the teachers too. If there's apps to download or things to bring or think about, and I put a little form on there, like, what would you like to learn from Tony Vincent? And so I have that to review before I ever visit their school too.
Tony, I want to come to one of your workshops. I think I would learn a lot.
They're pretty fun. And it all goes down to the teachers don't have the time. I want to make the time they spend with me relevant and things they can take back and use, and I want it to be fun. I throw in the corniest of jokes and puns, but I think that's fun, and sometimes I get a lot of eye rolls. but I think learning should be a good time, and when teachers learn, it should also be a good time.
I totally agree. Let's move on to the inspiration round now, and this is your opportunity to share some nuggets of advice and best resources and what has helped you up until this point in education. Could you share with us, first of all, your proudest moment?
The International Society for Technology and Education is the biggest EdTech conference in the world, though it's always held in the U.S. And they move from major city to major city each year, but it's a yearly event. There's a lot of tech educators, tens of thousands of them, together in one city, and I was presenting and at this conference, and you're between sessions, and this thing is so big, but the really good sessions fill up, so you want to get there fast. And so I'm going up the escalator, and the woman asked me, and I didn't even catch her name because I was just so into going to my next session. And she said, "Oh, Tony." So I was like, I stepped off the escalator to talk to her, and she said, "I just want you to know I didn't retire because of you." She's like, what, wait, is she?
Bit random?
Yeah. Like, I'm not in charge of your retirement paperwork. I'm like, what? Well, how could this have happened? Does she confuse me for somebody
what button
else?
did I press?
Yeah, she knew my name. So she went on, and this was actually in 2007, and she said that she had been a fan of my websites for years, and she had never met me before, but just simply what she was reading off my blog and website inspired her so much, and she loved doing things with podcasting. And she was having so much fun teaching that she changed her plans, and she was all eligible to retire, but she went on a couple more years, and she blamed it on me. But I was on it, and in the moment I was just kind of taken aback, and I go back up the escalator, and then I want to go hug that woman. I'm like, that was like the biggest compliment I had ever received. And something that I learned from that, or a few things, it's kind of amazing that I'm sitting in front of my computer here in the Midwest of the United States, and maybe posting something that I think is cool, but who knows if anybody else is going to really see it. Other people do, and so now I try to make sure that people, when I use their work from their websites, that I let them know. If I can find their email address or a forum or something, just take a moment and say, "Hey, I love what you posted. I really value your work, and you're changing the world, even here in Iowa with me." It can make a big difference to let people know that they are making a difference.
Let's move on nicely then to the best advice you've ever received.
I was at a conference in Miami, which was fondly called Miami Device. Familiar from the 80s television show Miami.
I remember. I'm old enough.
Okay, so Miami Device, and it was a really fun conference. It was a fun name. And the keynote speaker is Kevin Honeycutt, and he's from Kansas, so not too far away from me, but I never really got to sit down and spend much time with him. We'd be at the same conference sometimes, but I remember one time he was teaching in the room next to me, and I thought, oh great, I can stop and talk to Kevin. Never once got to see him. I heard him through the walls, but never got to actually talk and say hi because we were both so busy at this conference. So at Miami Device, we made some time, and we got to sit down, and he's kind of like Yoda. He always has some wise words to say, but the ones that really stuck with me, because we were talking about doing project-based learning, both with students and then our very own projects. And he said, perfect is the enemy of done. And I thought, that is so true. It doesn't matter if something's perfect if it's never done and never shared and just sits there. So, and I kind of have a perfectionist streak in me, which I try to think, okay, at some point you got to say it's done because time is a limited resource. I've been really having that echo in my head every day as I work on things, is that it's okay if this isn't perfect. At some point it just needs to be done.
I think that's what we do as teachers, though. We're always striving for that perfect lesson, and at some point you've got to say, I've got to put it out there and I've got to try it, because until you get to that point, you can't reflect on whether it was good, and you can't decide if it needs to be improved, because nothing is ever perfect, and it needs to evolve, and it needs to be dynamic.
Exactly, yeah. And it's true, you can't reflect on it, and reflection is really where so much of your own learning happens, when you think about the experience.
So let's move on to what your sources of inspiration are.
Well, since I was a little boy, I've always loved Star Trek. My dad was a fan of the original show, so and I've watched every episode and every movie many, many times. And I just feel like right now the kid in me feels like I am living in the future. But as a kid, I love thinking about people in the future, people working together, using technology to solve problems. And I love that technology made people's lives better. they just touch a button and their food appears. That's
I love that.
Yeah. So, and I have sitting right here in my office here, a pad that I made when I was in 6th or 7th grade. And in Star Trek, they call them pads. I think it's a personal access display device. It's their version of an iPad, really. And it looks so old-fashioned. It's sitting right next to an iPad right now. But this model is just so funny. But I found this kit and I wanted to, because I thought, oh, this is going to be so cool. I can just touch on the screen and things will happen. But it was a fake, it was a fake screen on there. But I just thought it was great. And I just couldn't wait for a future where we had touch screens and we had, access to instant information and we could make video calls. And I can do all that now. And I still feel like the kid in me is just so excited about what we can do.
That's awesome. Okay, let's move on to now a personal teaching or educational habit that works for you time and again.
I really believe that you have to, we deal with so much information all the time. We really need to I need to, and it might work for everybody else too, is I need to put my information somewhere where I can find it again. And I think that's the number one problem with organization is, well, I thought I put it here and it's there. So I've settled for myself on Evernote, and I just keep pretty much my whole life inside of Evernote. If I'm unsure if I'm going to use something again or not, I put it in Evernote because it's so searchable later. And then I keep my to-do list there. So I have one spot. I don't put stickies around my computer because oftentimes I'm not in front of it. But if I put it in Evernote, I know that I can find it again and it's on my to-do list in Evernote, then I know that I will get it done, or at least it will haunt me until I do.
It's so interesting that you said that because I've recently got into Evernote and it's so powerful, and I had no idea because prior to that I had email folders and I would stick emails in all these email folders, and then on my network I would have folders here and folders there, and then you go to search something and you're like, where did I put that? How do you think teachers could use that more effectively?
The habit of getting into, okay, let me put this into Evernote. Oh, I have this piece of paper that I need to use in a month. Scan it and put it in Evernote. Or Evernote even has, if you're using it on a mobile device, a kind of a scanning mode. You use your device's camera to snap a picture. It'll turn it, right. You can even make the text on there searchable and store that in your Evernote too. So you can help you go paperless. Just using it again and again. And I think it's great. And I didn't have access to Evernote when I was in the classroom, but keeping anecdotal notes about students and things that you see. If you have your phone or a mobile device, or you're in front of, no matter what device you're on, that's what I love about Evernote. It works on. So just call it up real fast. Make the notes you need. It doesn't have to take long. And if you don't have time to type, there's a little record button and you just record your voice.
Oh, it's such a good app. We all need to be using it. So let's move us on to our final question. And that comes down to, do you have a resource that you can share with our listeners, internet or otherwise, that you think would add value to their daily practice?
Twitter is one thing, and I feel like everybody has value and something to say. So I follow, I think, over 10,000 people now on Twitter, which if I call it up, the stream just flies right by. But I found,
you can't even see it.
Yeah. Gosh, there's got to be a way to pluck the best things out, or what are most people talking about it? And hashtags is one of those ways. But I found this website in the last month called Nuzzle at Nuzzle.com. You link it to your Twitter account, and it's really handy if you follow a lot of people like I do. And it analyzes all the links that people have been sharing and shows you the ones that have been shared the most. So at any one time, I can just click Nuzzle. It's a website and it's an app, and I can see from the last hour, last 2, 4, 8, or last 24 hours what is trending among the people that I follow. And since I follow educators, that's what I get. So I just click now, and the top story in the last 8 hours on my Twitter is "The secret to teaching great writing. Use the news." Is the headline. And then I can click through and find that. So it's just like the best resources that I find every day. If I don't have time to really check Twitter, I can just go into Nuzzle and just see, what are some of the top stories right there. So following that many people used to be a really big disadvantage to me, and now with Nuzzle, it's flipped around, and I'm glad that I follow that many people because now there's more people to contribute to my Nuzzle feed, and I get some of the very best stories there.
Where do they come up with these names, honestly?
Well, everybody wants a .com name, so I think every English word has been taken, so now they start coming up with weird spellings, and for some reason their icon is a blue porcupine, which I don't know.
You don't want to nuzzle again.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So the other thing is, Nuzzle works for me because I follow a lot of people, but if you're new to Twitter, going to Twitter and just seeing everything in one stream is kind of boring, and maybe you're used to looking at things in a magazine format. So another tool that's online and they have mobile apps is called Flipboard. In Flipboard, you can link it to your Twitter account, or you can just type in hashtags, and it takes all the tweets that are there and turns it into this magazine style with big pictures and links, and you can still follow the things, you can still read the tweets, but it's just formatted in a much friendlier way, like a magazine.
Thank you very much for sharing all of your advice with us. We're coming to the end of the show, but before we say goodbye, if our listeners want to connect with you, how can they best reach you?
So twitter.com/Tony Vincent, but really learninginhand.com. One of the things that I've recently changed on the website is I have some things that I've made. I realize a lot of my blog posts I link to other things, but I love to make things and share them with others, just as I encourage teachers to have their students do. So there's a By Tony section at the top, so it's kind of a quick way to find some of those things there.
Thank you for joining us today on Inspiration for Teachers. For more resources, tips, and advice, visit our website, inspirationforteachers.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would love to connect with you. Just click like on our Facebook page at facebook.com/inspirationforteachers.